I'm going to do something different. I've been wanting to do a landscape. Well, I'm not really going to do a landscape, but what I am going to do is I'm going to try to draw visions of my childhood or of growing up on the farm, just in like little bits here and there. I'm not going to make a whole scene out of it. Like, for instance, we grew a lot of wheat, and my great-grandmother's name was Wheat. My grandmother's maiden name was Wheat. So I'm going to draw some wheat right here. I'm going to add a little brown around it. Just add a little bit to them with that. So yes, there was a lot of wheat. We had wheat fields. And it's kind of a small little thing of wheat, but yeah, that's what we had. Okay, so then, of course, we had bales of straw, and straw is kind of yellowish, and we had the square bales. And generally that's used for bedding, not so much for eating. Eating is more alfalfa. Now, alfalfa grows green in a field. I'm not going to try and make it fancy. I'm just going to make it because we would mow it down into rows. Once it was all grown up, we would mow it down into rows. And I actually got to help out with that. And then we would come back. We didn't have the balers that we do now. You know, they didn't do the big round bales back then. Some still do some of the square bales on some things. But I would come along and I'd be on the old orange Alice Chalmers tractor. If anybody remembers what one of those looks like. Yeah, I was on that old orange Alice Chalmers. And the pedals were way down in here and I had short legs. But I managed. Sometimes I looked like I looked kind of weird sometimes. Actually, that tire should be back here somewhere. Let's make it bigger and put it back there. But, yep, the big old Alice Chalmers. And we would be pulling. This is just a little folksy way of showing what I did. Then we'd have a hitch here, and we'd be hauling a wagon, probably usually a flatbed, and there would be some guys here and here, and they would be picking up the bales. Well, no, wait a minute. First I ran the baler through. But the bales are now made. We've got the bales of hay all made up. And so these guys are going along and they're throwing them up on here. And of course there's one guy who's on the wagon. Nice little stick figures, huh? The guy on the wagon is stacking them. Depending on how many high school boys were willing to go out and work for a day or two of money just doing alfalfa. They worked hard, so my mom, she would always make oatmeal cookies. Let's go in the house. We lived in a 2-story or 1.5-story. Sorry, that's supposed to be kind of a peak there. It's going to be a fairly basic house. Anyway, we had this house. And we lived in it. Okay, you get the idea. This is not a pretty picture. This is just a story picture. Anyway, Mom was always in the kitchen baking, so we'll just consider she's in there. Just imagine she's in there and she's baking. But what she always made was, where's some gold? Oh, here, yellow. No, actually, they'd come out kind of brown. She would make oatmeal cookies. Yeah, that's pretty big outside the house, but that's not the idea. Oatmeal chocolate chip cookies. And she would make a bunch of them. And those boys would come in and they'd sit at that table eating, eating these huge old cookies. But no, they would eat all those cookies and they just loved them. Mom would probably make 2-3 dozen and they were gone. They could eat those cookies. That's in the kitchen. They also had to clean up before they came in. But then they would have to go to the big old barn. And that is where the hay was stored, was in that big old barn. They would, of course there's big doors all over barns. You know how that is. And there were stalls in there, all kinds of stuff. But in the top level was where they would put the bales. And generally there was by this time they had gone up to the point of having yes it is doing time lapse. They had what do you call those things? Not an auger. But anyway, one of those things where it would just automatically drive, it worked on a pulley system, and the bales they'd put the bale on, and the bales would they'd be run by the motor, generally from the tractor, or maybe a little motor at the bottom. It was removable, so I would say it probably ran from the tractor. I generally didn't have much to do with this part. But when it came to feeding the animals, then yes, sometimes I had to throw bales down to go feed and then go put them in the hay trough. They had the corral where all the horses and, yeah. We had this trough type thing here, but it was for feed the hay all down through here, and the cows would come up and they would eat the hay. These happy cows. Yes, very sticky stick figures. And there were even a few horses in there, but that's what would happen. They would eat that. Now of course I was generally in the kitchen helping Mama make either a meal or the cookies, unless I was out on the tractor. I did one or the other. We also had hogs. Now hogs are a whole different animal, and they do smell. We had these hogs. And they also had occupied the bottom of, well, I don't know about this barn, but a barn. The bottom level of a barn. But the pigs, they were stinky, but man, was that pork tasty. But Mama Pig can get very, very nasty. You might think that a pig is sweet and cute. They are as piglets, and they get a little bit nasty as they get older. But if she was having little piggies, you had to get her from wherever she was at, which was in some kind of corral, into what we called a farrowing barn, because otherwise they might accidentally lay on their little piglets. These are little piglets. Well, of course, hogs don't sweat, so they're not dumb because they wallow. That's just trying to keep themselves cool. But those little piglets, if you needed to get them separated. So we'd use these boards. these little boards, and we would hold those things and have a little hole in them right there. And we would use those boards to get in between us and the big old mama pig, because she could be one angry sow. I hope you're having fun with this, because I sure am. And cedars grow all year long, and we lived in the hills. Yeah, let's just say this is the hills. The Flint Hills were right over here on this part of the, and there was like big hills and little hills and flat spaces, and there was a creek running through it. Yeah, that's a little creek. But anyway, there were always cedars, and the big cedars, you needed those big old cedars. You just had to have them. You just had to have those cedar trees. But you'd get these little scrawny little things growing up all the time, because cedars put off a lot of little seeds. So Grandpa would have us kids going out there. I should have used green on that. Grandpa would have us kids going out here and cutting down those tiny little trees for a penny a tree. And the big ones we'd keep. The big ones, those were the nice big trees we wanted. And we also lived right next to the Big Blue River. We were right in between, just like that. And so we did a lot of fishing. Now, I love to fish. I absolutely loved it. And, there's a current there. It's definitely got a current. And so we would be on this bank here, and well, it went way past here, but I got something in the way. I hope you're having fun. I sure am. But we would go fishing, and I mean, there was just nothing more fun than sitting. Of course, we were down here on a sandbar somewhere, but sitting down the bottom of because usually the bank was way up here, and we'd be out there, and we'd have our poles out in the water, and we'd be pulling in fish. If the fishing was good. You never knew. You never knew if the fish was going to be good. But if we could, we'd pull in these fish, and we would just get some nice old fish out of that river. So anyway, that's pretty much the story of how I grew up. Except, I guess I should tell you that there were, wherever there's room, there was my big brother. There was me. And yes, we did, well, not when we were doing chores, but if we went to school, at that time we still had to wear dresses, but, girls generally are drawn as wearing dresses to give the difference. Then there was my sister and my next sister. Let's see, that's 4 of us, yep. I'm in the right direction now. Then there was the little brother. I was short, by the way, so if I look like I'm about the same size as the others, that's okay. And then there was little baby Viola, our littlest, youngest sister, who is married and living in Seattle now. And so this was me, Clifford, me, Paula, Janet, Clifford. Paula, Janet, Lyle, and Viola. Viola was named after my grandmothers, Viola and Ruth. So that is the story of me. Oh, from Bad Hair Central to you, I love you. Have a great week. Enjoy your Monday. Draw out a little sketch of your story if you want. I encourage you to, and find something to laugh about. Make some good memories, and smile and wave at somebody. Smiles are great. I love smiles. Now, I get a frown lots of times, but I like to turn them upside down when I can. This kind of thing makes me happy. You make me happy. I do this because I want to have you be a part of my life. So please share a part of your life down in the comments. Just if you grew up on a farm, if this resembles any part of it at all, what hits home for you? If you grew up in the town, talk about your city life, your town life, whichever it is. But I love you. We'll see you again tomorrow. Mwah. Good night.